And welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Steve Patterson. I'm joined again with my brother, Troy. We are the Gen X Transplant Brothers, and tonight we're going to start a new thing that we're going to do here. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Comment below if you like this kind of content, and also we're going to ask you some questions as we go along. But what we're going to do tonight is we are going to count down our first 10, top 10, as you might say, bands as we grew up, being born both in 1966 until about 1985. What were the first 10 bands that we think really influenced us, that we really liked, that we really dug? And I'm Steve Patterson. As I said, I'm joined, as always, on these episodes with my brother Troy. See him right here. Troy, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
I see we both have our hair done just perfect. How's yours looking?
Looking good.
Looking good. Is that how you do it every morning on purpose?
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Just like me. I get out of the shower, I shake my head. That's about it. All right. Well, hey, we talked about talk about these top 10, but I want to say real fast, this is the first episode that we've seen here that I've had a hat on. And the reason for that is that, of course, as everybody here knows, I worked for a long time covering the Georgia Bulldogs. I've been a Georgia Bulldog fan. Seems like my whole life, but it really hasn't been. But it's been for half of my life easily. And at this point, we have this weekend Georgia and Texas getting ready to play. Depending on when you're watching this game will already have happened, perhaps. But last season, Texas played Georgia and lost 2 times. And a good friend, not really, but Troy likes him and I like him, Matthew McConaughey, great guy. We love everything about him, but he's also a Texas fan. And something that really chaps my rash, as they say, is when a celebrity comes in and makes all kinds of goo-goo gaga stuff about their team. And last year, seeing him parade up and down the sidelines at both of those Georgia victories, hearing him with his whatever he says, I just wanted to hope that this year that we can win a third time. All right, all right, all right. As Troy might say.
No, oh no, oh no.
Sorry to put you on the spot. But before we came on, I was saying this, and Troy's not really into all the college football thing like me, but he said that before I said it. But anyway, so I had that in there. So hopefully we have a great game this weekend. Hopefully Georgia wins, and then I say I'm just playing with Matthew. I think that's great, and I really love him and his movies and all that. But so Troy, being born in the '60s, it was hard. It was tough. We had to drink out of garden hoses. We had to collect lightning bugs and put them into jars. We had to fall down and rub dirt on it. We had to play on monkey bars that were rusty.
Check the electrical systems with forks.
Check the electrical system with forks. What is that?
Greg did that.
Do you remember? Okay. Before we get started, do you recall the one time that, remember the neighbors they were kind of different than us, and we were out next to their property doing various things, wandering around, and they had an electrical fence. I had my hand on your shoulder as we were walking through the dark, and you touched the line, and I was the one that got shocked?
That's funny. I hadn't thought about that in 89 years.
89 years, really. But you do remember it, right?
I do remember now that you say that, but that was crazy. You got shocked.
I did. It was like, what the hell just happened? All I knew is it's dark. We're wandering in the desert. We're maybe like 10 years old, But anyway,
yeah, I forgot about that fence, too. Wow.
Yeah, shocking, and a shot in the dark, which is exactly what we're talking about tonight. The music that led us into that era. So, Troy, I will start out with my first favorite band. And before that, I want to say that it's not like this band was my first favorite music interest, because obviously there was other things. I remember being a little kid listening to Elvis records. I remember it was Don't Be Cruel was my actually favorite song. I had the LP, and I remember listening to it at my grandparents' house, and Hound Dog album or whatever it was, but I remember that song was really big. And there was other ones that were in there, and there's a lot of them that have sentimental value from the earlier days, like 73, 74. But my first big one was that after Troy, when we split, I went to Chicago, you went to Arizona because of the parents and all this stuff. I don't even know how I first heard of Kiss. It might have been in a phone call with you, but I know it was before we actually saw each other that summer. But I remember at the time I was being driven to the record store to buy my first album ever. I think I was like in the 5th grade or something like that, 5th or 6th grade. And I had my $4.99, which is what it cost to buy an album in those days, an LP of 33. And I was going to get whatever the name of the album was, that Glen Campbell's version of The Dock of the Bass, right? The Otis Redding song. For whatever reason, that was the song. That version of it is what I remember, and I also remember oddly that was Dad's favorite song at the time, and maybe that had something to do with it. But I remember my mom. I went to RPM Records on Harlem Avenue, which is right where the Jewel is or was today. For those that are still there, right, Foster and Harlem, I think it is, and RPM used to be right there on the Harlem side. And I walked into the record store with my $4.99 to get that album. And I walked out with Kiss Rock and Roll Over. And from that day on, I was in the Kiss army. So Kiss, to me, was the number one thing. I don't even know what it was about the songs, but Dr. Love and all that stuff. And this is prior to even Christine 16 and those things that came a little bit later before Kiss sort of fizzled. But I remember, I was just all about Kiss army. How did you think about Kiss? How did Kiss come in with you, Troy?
First time. Oh, well, before they got popular, our Aunt Connie, my mom's sister, had old records, and she had Kiss's first album, and we would listen to it at the farm down in the basement. Didn't really care for it much. We called them the Monsters.
We did?
Yeah.
Oh, so wow! I don't remember.
Yeah, she had Kiss's first album. Me, you, and Greg listened to that. We thought it sucked.
That's
because we also had the album Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and we listened to that one and Kiss.
Of course. That's funny. I've always been wondering where my affinity for that story comes from.
Right.
Thanks for that. That's a future episode, people. But so yeah, that's great. And of course, Troy and I have some stories on this. We're going to talk about seeing these bands live. That's going to be another conversation we have. And I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Troy, about that time, you remember, this is early 76-ish, probably. You'd just gotten to Sarita. I was still living in Chicago. I came out to visit for the summer, as I did in those days. This is the days in the earlier videos. I'll put a link up here or link below for people. When we talk about playing in our sort of fake band, Roots, in the backyard with our, stuff like that. But so Kiss.
I'd heard of Kiss, but on the radio, which was WLS Chicago, we listened to that, and Hard Luck Woman was really popular, as was Dr. Love. So that was kind of, those are the two songs that I thought, oh, here's these guys again, these Kiss fellas. And I liked them. I thought they were great. But
what was your first favorite band?
My first favorite band, like we said, Aunt Connie had a bunch of albums, and we would listen to. The first one I listened to and really liked was Three Dog Night. One is the loneliest number that you ever knew.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
And it had Halls of Shangri-La on it.
And the Halls of Shangri-La. That's a great song, man. That's one of the best songs ever. It's a great song.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great song. Has anybody ever redone that?
I don't think so. I think that would be hard to do. I've tried to learn it on guitar and can't.
I'd say
you can't. It's one of those songs you can't play on guitar and sing, so there's no point in trying to do it.
Oh, okay. Well, there's two things.
It is a good song. You can play that on guitar, and that is recognizable. People go, I know that song. That's Shangri-La. Because it starts off with guitar.
This is a challenge. I'll play that on this stream sometime on guitar for you. I don't know it, but I will do it. And we'll do that. At some point, we're going to have. I see your Marshall amp back there. You see my Fender shirt. I see my Fender amp right there. And we'll talk about those type of things earlier, our guitar equipment. Or not earlier, but later, but eventually. So, Three Dog Night.
Yeah. Three Dog Night. That's the first band I remember liking, other than Johnny Cash. Loved Johnny Cash.
Yep. Yep.
My
Johnny
next
Cash.
one, I think, was Faces with Rod Stewart and Ron Wood. I had that album, Every Picture tells a story. Yeah, Faces. I loved Faces. I found them in Grandma Carruthers's hi-fi. She had this record player that would open up, and it had all these albums in there. And Three Dog Night, Faces, and Kisses. I had Aerosmith, Boys in the Attic. That'd been my third favorite.
So your third favorite is okay. We'll get third favorite in a second.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So my second, let's see. After Kiss, it really the thing with me is as I've done with most musical things in my past, as far as bands that I've liked, as we'll get to as we talk further beyond just 85. I always get enamored with one band that sort of dominates, and everybody else is just second fiddle. And that's what happened with Kiss. When Kiss was around for me, I was Kiss Army. I was in the Kiss Army. I had the patch. I had my whole bedroom. I remember when Kiss Alive 2 came out. I had got it for Christmas. I put it on the mantle, the fireplace in the house. It was like it was like a temple. My whole bedroom was covered in posters. And I remember actually one time saying to myself that when I grow up, I want to make sure that I always keep my house covered in Kiss posters. And there's a part of me still to this day that still wants to just wrap a room in Kiss posters just to say I did it. But because Kiss is still awesome, regardless of how I might say this ends. But and believe me, I do not have any negative at anything with Kiss. They're one of the best rock and roll bands of all time.
Yes,
Particularly they defined American rock in a way that I don't think people understand. But moving on from them, what happened with me was I think Kiss just sort of played out, and maybe other things were going on in my life. But do you remember Angel, the band Angel?
Yeah, Brother Greg loved Angel.
Right, and he introduced me to Angel, and they had some connection to Kiss. I forget what it was. It might have been the same manager.
Yeah,
Casablanca.
Bill Coin
right.
Management and Casablanca Records.
Exactly.
Kind of took in the Angel. That's why they had the act. They had all the costumes and stuff.
Right. Well, right. And for those that don't know, and the way that they did it is that they just wore all white on stage, and then they had their Angel logo was Kiss-esque, but instead of being gold and all that, it was white and black, and it was you could read it upside down.
Yeah,
and
you could read it right side up and upside down. It was really
right.
cool.
It looked right. It was one of the first bands to do something like that. But their guitar player, Punky Meadows. Yeah,
fabulous Stratocaster.
I know. See, that's the Strat thing. Remember, I had a Strat then. I still have a Strat sitting right there. But I remember. I don't even know. I can't not for a second remember any of those songs. I don't even remember that. What?
They had a song called Tower. I really liked.
Good.
That's it. That's the only one I can remember.
But I remember trying to play his stuff and being really enamored with it and really liking it, and then also just digging the music. But that was a short phase because this is one of those transitional phases for me. So as I was going from Kiss to Angel, and you were going from, well, actually we might not be overlapping here because I might be ahead of you because Faces and the other stuff was, well, you saw Kiss in Connie's, but in your aunt's collection.
Yeah.
And then you found another one there. But by the time I was into Angel, we're talking already now by like 77, 78. Where are you?
77, yep. We're getting into Cheap Trick now. Cheap Trick and Aerosmith. Nugent, Thin Lizzy, all equally the same to me.
Boys are
back in town. I can't say which one came first. They
Stranglehold. God, remember how
freaking...
remember how crazy he was in those days? It was like a human buzzsaw. I mean, it wasn't even real. It was like, are you kidding me? This guy's like, he's like red meat on steroids. We didn't even know what that even was then. That's me saying it now. But it's like, gee whiz, look at this guy.
Double live guns.
He's got this big ass red hair, all curly, and everything.
Yeah,
We're like, what the hell is this?
Gibson guitars.
Didn't he play like like a ES335 or something like that?
Yeah, I
It
don't
was
know what
some.
it was, but it
I
was
don't
a
know if it
big
was
fat
huge,
Gibson. I think he played that because
but
I
he was
think he might be
great.
quite a large man as it is.
Well, I think tall wise,
Yeah,
maybe
tall.
now
So
he's
he
gotten
he
bigger, but
looked
right.
he looked stupid having a Les Paul, so that's why he had those huge
And his
guitars.
scale, his guitar, with his
Yeah,
size,
I remember
but it, but he
Billy
backed it
Gibbons
up.
Billy Gibbons bought him a Les Paul, said, "Why do you play that ugly guitar?" So Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top buys him a Les Paul. Ted Nugent plays it, and he looks like this monster of a man carrying this tiny little Les Paul.
It's funny you mentioned Billy Gibbons. In a future episode, I'll tell you about an amp that I had that Billy Gibbons was the owner of before I owned
Oh,
it.
wow.
Yeah, that happened many years later. But anyway, yeah, man, Nugent and all that. So that transition phase was interesting. And that's what I'm sort of talking about with Angel. And I put number 3 also as Aerosmith. And the reason I put 3 as Aerosmith is, I mean, I loved Aerosmith, don't get me wrong, during those days as far as what I heard, but I was tuned into it by you because you really are into Joe Perry. And
Joe
I think
Perry was the
this
best.
might be where your lifelong love fest with Black Les Pauls came from.
Yep.
Yes. And so when we heard that, and then I remember I went back to Chicago after being with y'all for the summer, and after hearing that, and then live Bootleg came out. Remember, it even had like the coffee cup
Yeah, stain
stain on
on
the
it.
right. It looks so real and and raw. And I really love that album. And they had like what was it? Chip Away at the Stone was on there. It was like
Yep.
previously unreleased. There was a live
That's
version,
a great
and
song.
and we heard all those songs live for those of us that hadn't seen it, and I hadn't seen it during those days. We'll talk about shows that we did see in another episode, but um that just blew me away. I remember getting that album and just listening to uh live Bootleg from Aerosmith over and over and over again. Tell me about Joe Perry with you and Aerosmith.
Joe Perry. I went from Ace Frehley to Joe Perry. Well, you know what? Rick Nielsen, Cheap Trick was in there,
Right.
but mostly Joe Perry because I was just like, when okay, I don't know if we're getting ahead of ourselves here,
Well,
but
yeah,
I look so
let's dial it back to bands and not guitar influencers. Yeah, we can have that for another episode.
okay. Joe Perry, just everything he did, I was just amazed by everything Joe Perry did. I wanted to be him.
Did you apply that to the band of Aerosmith, or was it just Joe?
Aerosmith to Steven Tyler, but when he broke off and did the Joe Perry project, I was all in on Joe Perry project. Still am. They're a very good band today. My Les Paul thing went from Thin Lizzy, but Joe Perry played a left-handed Strat right-handed because I think he was influenced by Jimi Hendrix. I had to do that. I still have a black left-handed Strat that's set up to play right-handed because of Joe Perry.
Oh, that's exciting. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's crazy.
So, how long have you had it?
That was my backup guitar in Enemy.
So wow.
Yeah, I had
The
my
longest
Explorer.
my oldest guitar now was purchased in the 2000s.
I still have my Gibson Explorer was number one. Then I had my backup guitar was that left-handed Strat.
Yeah, I don't have anything from.
You
Well, I don't know.
remember?
I don't have anything really beyond
Remember
last
when
week in most regards. But what?
we went to see the band called Saxon, and the guitar player took his guitar, and all of a sudden it'd end up right back here, and he'd start
Yeah, what they
playing.
did right. That was the beginning of that stuff.
So
Right.
I had two left-handed Strats because they were cheap. They were
Okay.
cheaper than the right-handed ones because they couldn't sell them. So I had two left-handed Strats. One was sunburst, one was black. My sunburst one, I tried to do that number. I had the strap locks, and I went and threw it, hoping it would come right back here and I could play it. It went straight up. The strap lock broke and it went straight up into the sky. I was practicing outside. I mean, it was way up there. and I couldn't see it where it was at because it's in Arizona in the sun. I was trying to block the sun so I could catch my guitar, and it just went bam and cracked the neck. I got a new neck for it, but it never was the same.
That's a great story.
I don't know if I'm getting off subject here, but